Hi, my name is Jeremy, this is Red Means Recording, and this is the second video for June's Patreon Q&A, where someone was asking how I go about creating melodies. And I've been thinking about this for a few weeks because it's kind of a complex subject for somebody with a music performance dropout in his history. I did play a lot of music, both classical and jazz and stuff like that, but I don't have really a full year of official music history in my body, so while I'm able to do this stuff, I might not be the best person to talk about it, but I'm going to try. So the way I learned how to play melodies besides classical and jazz playing was by playing along with other people's music, and I cannot stress enough how important this is if you are learning. Pick a song off the radio that you like, pick a song off whatever that you like, and get yourself whatever input device works for you the best. I was keyboard or a guitar for a little bit, and just play along with it and see what makes it tick. So what is a melody? A melody is a series of notes that is playing around the chord structure of the piece. So let's talk about what makes a chord and what makes a melody from that. Music is made up of scales and keys. A scale, for instance, would be the C major scale. All right, so that's all the white notes right here. C minor scale would be a little bit different. And that's one form of the C minor scale. Another one would be... There are a ton of scale modes and a ton of keys out there, for lack of a better word. And sometimes keys aren't completely static, and sometimes chords aren't just based off that. So let's try to make this really, really simple. With the C major scale there, you have these notes to play with. A C major chord is the root, the third, and the perfect fifth. That's the C major chord right there. So if you're writing a piece in C major, you're going to have the chord play, and then a melody on top of that is going to be you playing around with the C major scale, for the most part. Really, 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 really simple, just playing around with it. Within scales and within chords, when you start playing them next to each other, and also when you have a chord playing, you start developing relationships with the notes. And some of these are more consonant, meaning they are more melodious to the ear, and some of them are more dissonant, which means they are less melodious or create tension. So in the case of the C major scale, the C major chord, obviously since we have the tonic, the third, and the fifth, anything that you play up here will be like incredibly consonant to the point where it's boring. When you start introducing notes that aren't directly in the triad, things get more interesting. So the F isn't in the triad, but it's not terrible sounding. Technically that's a dissonant thing, but it leads to the suspended version of C, which is really nice. This is the perfect fifth of C major. So perfect fourth is actually still considered extremely melodious and is great to use in your melodies. Up here, we have A, which again, it wants to resolve to the perfect fifth. If you go up from A, you have even more dissonance because now you have the note that's right underneath the tonic. And it really wants to resolve to C or something else. But that B natural right here also makes up the seventh chord. So, you know, the seventh chord exists because it's really beautiful sounding and has an inherent melodious tension, an inherent melodic tension to it. So when you're writing a melody, you don't want to just play the easy notes. You want to play with the tension of those dissonances and use them to draw the listener into a place of tension and then release it. I'm going to go to C minor now because it's a little less basic than C major. So in C minor, you can see the notes are a little bit different. We've dropped the third down a half step, and we've introduced the G sharp or A flat as opposed to the A, and our B is now flatted as well. That's a C minor seventh and has a similar effect in terms of tension, but it's a little jazzier. So this is where we get into where I was playing jazz band stuff, and I learned blues scales to death, because this is how you solo. One of the cool things about blues scales is that you can introduce this incredibly not in key dissonance right here, the F sharp. So if we have our chord down here, invert a little bit, you don't really want to hang out on this F sharp very often, but it's really good to create little tensiony riffs. So again, there's another way you can play with tension in your melodies. Next step is thinking about what's going to come next in the chord progression. And this is where playing along with another song can really teach you things. Even if you're only playing the root of the chord progression, let's say you're not like a great keyboard player, like if the chord progression is, you find out that it's C to A to F, just having that playing down there will give you a sense of how the notes that are coming from the melody are relating to these chords. When we were talking earlier about how different notes relate to the different tensions of different keys or scales, when you're working through a chord progression, things get a little different, because if I am going from this to this, let's just stick with that. Looks like A flat major to E flat major. All of a sudden, I can now play with the shared notes of that, and the tension between them will resolve in really interesting ways. So what do these notes share? What do these keys share in terms of chords? So there's my A flat major. There's my E flat major. So this note's not shared by them, but it could be. I mean, it's fine. The perfect fifth of the E flat major chord, the B flat right here, adds a unique tension to the A flat major. I just went to C minor there. I guess what my point is with all of this is that learning chords and learning scales are going to help you immensely when writing a melody. Eventually, you want this stuff to kind of just like flow out of you, but you can't get there unless you actually know how these things are supposed to work together and practice that. Practicing scales, at least so you understand what notes to reach for when you're playing a melody, is going to help you so much. You don't have to learn a ton of music theory. I didn't learn a ton of music theory, but that's going to help you a ton. So there's a couple more things I want to get over. I don't want to make this video too long, but just some best practices in writing a melody. Gigantic interval jumps, like anything over a fifth, is going to be something you want to sort of like hang on to for like special occasions. Your melodies should generally be pretty tight in terms of the intervals that you're playing. Save those big jumps for special things like the intro of a section, or maybe like going into your chorus or something like that. In modern music, a lot of melodies in pop music are just dead simple, like dead simple. There's a trend that started a few years ago where like literally someone is just singing the same note over and over and over again until the end of the phrase, and then they might drop a couple notes. That brings us to another thing about melodies. Change your notes, but try to keep a similar rhythm throughout, because that's going to create like that hook kind of feel. Having a dedicated rhythm to your melody that you play within, that you repeat throughout, is what's going to make it really like stand out and get in people's heads. A really good demonstration of this is the track that the Chainsmokers did with Chris Martin, something like this. I don't even know what it's called. Anyways, I'm going to pretend that it's in F major, or actually it's in C, but we're going to move between the F major, A minor, and C chords. And the cool thing about this melody is that it uses the same rhythm throughout, and all it does is jump up in intervals of the C major scale. It starts on C, the next phrase goes to E natural, and then the next phrase goes to G. So let's try this out real quick. We've jumped up to E. Now we're going to jump up to G, which is, again, in the triad of the C major scale, the perfect fifth. And then when he finally gets around to screaming the chorus, he jumps up an octave on that E there. I don't have enough keys for that, but I hope you notice that the rhythm stayed the same for the whole time, and that's really going to help your melody stand out if you can do that. So let's recap what we have learned here. Melodies are notes that are played from the key that you are in based on the scale of the chords that are playing at the time. So if you have a C major chord, you can play the C major scale. You are not limited to playing the notes in the scale that you are playing in. If you want to play notes that create dissonance, that will help your melody stand out and draw the listener through the melody itself. You want to keep your melodies relatively free of jumps all the time. Focus on moving more simple intervals and save those jumps for special occasions. Keep in mind that if you have chord changes throughout the piece, you can use the notes that might be dissonant to one chord to move into the next chord. They're going to have a different relationship for that chord. So again, the B flat in an A flat major scale is going to be a different note when you move to E flat major. Rhythm is incredibly important for melodies. You should strive to create an interesting and pleasing rhythm that will stand out and carry your melody throughout, and try playing around with the notes. Structure is important. And finally, keep it fucking simple. You don't need to go crazy. Remember, like, let's see, what is it? It's fucking 4 notes. I mean, come on. Note, interval, time, feeling. That's the melody. You got it. You're doing great. Learn some scales, learn some chords, play along with other people's music, and you will learn so much that you can bring into your own music. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording. I hope to God that this was somehow informative, because I feel like I just blathered for 25 minutes. I love you. Take care. Bye.